If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We share powerful real-life stories of resilience, justice, and personal transformation, especially for those who've been underestimated or overlooked. Join a growing community that values strength, dignity, and second chances. Your support helps us bring more voices to light and remind the world that it's never too late to take control of your story. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload, and share this video with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Subscribe now and stay empowered. I was always the first one through the doors and the last to leave. That became my rhythm at Sierra Logic Solutions, a modest software firm nestled in Boulder, Colorado. For the better part of 15 years, I was the quiet force behind our infrastructure, the one keeping everything stitched together while others were still brewing coffee or clocking out on the dot. I didn't resent the hours. I resented being unseen. My name is Denise Langley, and I'm 61. For years, I've been the architect, the problem solver, the emergency contact when things broke. Our flagship platform? I laid the foundation. But to the outside world, credit always landed at the feet of Derek Powell, our CEO. Clients praised our seamless systems like he'd written them himself in some candlelit genius binge. But it was my late nights combing through errant code, my weekends rebuilding features rushed out under pressure. My official title is Lead Systems Developer, but the work extended far beyond that. I trained new hires, soothed agitated clients, built internal tools to automate processes no one else even understood, and yes, kept the snack closet stocked when everyone else forgot. No one ever asked. They just expected it. The younger guys called me the team mom like it was a compliment. They offered polite thank yous, but not the professional respect they gave each other. I'd contribute an idea in meetings, only to watch it get repeated, word for word, by someone else minutes later. That someone would get the nod from Derek, a pat on the back, and a spot on the next project team. Derek was charming if you didn't know him. That brand of charm honed through years of bluffing confidence. Salt and pepper hair, designer suits, and just enough fake modesty to impress a conference room. But I saw the other side. The side that once asked me, straight-faced, if I could make the code prettier like I was applying lipstick, not optimizing our entire backend for scalability. I was there from the beginning, back when Sierra Logic was just Derek, a borrowed desk, and a 2-page business plan. I believed in it then. In him. In building something honest. And I did. We did. But as we grew, he changed. The more money that came in, the more invisible I became. Raises stopped. Recognition dried up. Promotions went to his lunch buddies. Bonuses became quiet favors passed to the loudest voices in the room, always male, always younger. I hadn't had a proper raise since I turned 58, and now I was juggling 3 major deliverables and leading the technical execution of our most important investor presentation to date. Everything hinged on that demo. The back-end stability, the data integrity, the dynamic rendering, it was all mine. Nobody said it outright, but they knew. Derek knew. That's why I stayed. Even through the exhaustion and the bitterness, I stayed. But lately, something had shifted. Derek barely acknowledged me anymore. My weekly updates went unread. Strategy meetings started happening without me. I once caught him whispering to HR just outside the server room, both of them going silent the moment I passed. I didn't confront them. I kept working, kept refining the code, kept pretending the storm I felt brewing might blow over. But I had started preparing, too. The air had changed. That quiet tension that creeps in before something breaks. I wasn't the only one who felt it, but I seemed to be the only one who understood its meaning. Over the last few weeks, Derek had brought in a string of new interns fresh out of college, all women, none with serious technical backgrounds. They were eager, if unprepared. I helped when I could, walked them through procedures, fixed their code, answered the same questions over and over. They weren't the threat, but they were part of whatever was coming. And I wasn't about to let it catch me off guard. It was exhausting. I wasn't in a supervisory role, nor was I being compensated to train others. Yet somehow, the task of guiding them fell to me. "They're here to grow," is what Caleb said, brushing off my concern like lint from his jacket. I suspected the truth was less generous. They were here for appearances, I thought, but kept it to myself. They congregated outside Caleb's office, always polished, always overenthusiastic. I'd catch glimpses of him leaning in too close during chats, chuckling a bit too loud at their hesitant banter, arranging one-on-one development lunches that looked more like personal outings than anything professional. One Tuesday morning, I found one of them, Tessa, I think, trying to connect to our live data server, using high-level credentials she clearly didn't grasp. When I stepped in and asked who'd authorized her, she said plainly, "Caleb told me I could explore." My chest tightened. It wasn't just the interns. Caleb's demeanor had shifted too. He barely made eye contact during our rare check-ins. If I raised a technical red flag, he responded with distracted nods or thin-lipped annoyance. He'd stopped including me in strategic discussions. Even worse, he began asking Logan, one of our junior devs, to lead engineering syncs despite Logan's painfully limited understanding of our back-end logic. Still, I stayed the course. Our investor demo was fast approaching. The margin for error was zero. The app had to load fast, look polished, and remain bulletproof under stress. I was the only one who truly knew how every subsystem connected. I'd been the one who'd crafted the logic trees, optimized the queues, and written the disaster recovery plan no one else had even glanced at. That entire week, I stayed long after sunset in our Seattle office, double-checking deployment protocols, layering in silent recovery loops, running simulation tests on repeat. No one asked me to. I did it because I refused to let my system be the reason we failed. But even as I worked, unease settled over me. The way someone senses rain before a drop falls. Like the platform I had spent years building was being slowly pried from my hands without a word. Then came Thursday night. Passing by the executive wing, I caught Caleb's voice through his cracked door. He was laughing with human resources and one of our board advisors. I only heard fragments. Been around too long. Rigid mindset. She won't fight it. Too buttoned up to cause drama. I froze mid-step. For a moment, I wanted to believe they were talking about someone else. But I wasn't naive. I walked calmly back to my cubicle. My hands moved without thinking, muscle memory guiding me through the command line. I accessed our internal systems panel and located the admin shell I'd reserved for emergencies. Then I opened a script I hadn't touched in over a year, just clean, concise logic buried deep in a test directory. A single activation would quietly rewire key routing functions. I didn't execute it. Not yet. I just looked. I wasn't reckless. But I was alert. I was prepared. The following Monday, Caleb stepped into the dev bay for the first time in weeks. He didn't belong there. He thrived in conference rooms and catered luncheons. But that day, he walked through the rows like a landlord inspecting tenants. I was in my corner station, headphones resting around my neck, the demo code queued for final tests. The infrastructure was solid. Every scenario accounted for. Every line tested. It was ready. And so was I. Caleb tapped twice on the edge of my desk, then motioned for me to remove my headphones. "Hey," he said with that practiced friendliness he used when trying to sound casual. "How's the demo shaping up?" "Testing's complete," I replied. "Simulations ran all weekend. Contingency layers are integrated. Live modules are running clean, and the interface has been polished." He gave a sharp nod, lips twitching like he was searching for the right expression, but landing somewhere near indifference. "Good. The investors fly in on Wednesday. Keep the visuals crisp and stay away from technical jargon when they ask questions. Just keep it high level." I paused. "I won't be presenting." He blinked just for a moment. "Right. Of course. Logan will walk them through it." Of course he would. Logan, with his rehearsed charm and borrowed confidence, had been groomed for this for weeks now. Caleb had quietly handed him the spotlight, while I remained the silent architect, buried beneath deliverables, expected to perform without recognition. Still, I nodded. Understood. He lingered. His jaw tightened, then eased. Whatever else he'd planned to say never came out. He turned and walked away. By Tuesday, something in the air had shifted. I noticed a steady stream of private meetings outside HR's glass office. Whispers stopped when I entered the room. Heads turned just slightly, then tilted back to their screens like nothing had happened. At 4:27 p.m., an email slid into my inbox. From HR, subject, 5 p.m., meeting confirmation. No message body, no attachments. Just a cold, impersonal invitation. I didn't need details. I saved my files, cleared my session, closed my laptop. Then I stood, smoothed my sweater, and walked the familiar hallway toward the conference room. Caleb was already seated beside Anita, the HR director I'd only ever spoken to in passing. Neither looked especially comfortable. I didn't sit. "We'll be brief," Caleb began, his voice low and forced. "There's been a realignment in leadership and operations. We've had to make difficult choices regarding legacy positions. Effective immediately, your role is being phased out." Each syllable landed like a prepared script. I watched him, silent. His gaze skittered away. "We value your contributions," Anita added, sliding a folder forward. "A severance agreement is included. You can review it at your convenience. No warning. No farewell. No mention of the weekends, the crises I'd solved, or the system that would soon be on display thanks to me." I nodded. "I understand." Caleb shifted, clasped his hands. "We're trusting you'll exit gracefully, just as you've always carried yourself." I met his eyes, calm. "Of course." I reached down, lifted my company-issued laptop, and set it on the table. "It's all there. The infrastructure, final version, full redundancy protocols. Functioning end-to-end." He exhaled quietly. "Appreciate it." I smiled, just a little. The kind of smile that makes people second-guess what they thought they understood. "I hope the investors enjoy the performance," I said evenly. Then I turned to Anita. "Will I be escorted out?" She hesitated. "Yes, as a formality." "All right then," I said. The walk through the open office was a silent procession. Nobody lifted their head. No goodbye. No acknowledgement. The glass doors slid open. The elevator waited. I stepped inside. The doors closed. 10 minutes. That's how long it would take the system to flag the device transfer and initiate the embedded override. The elevator began its descent, humming softly. And I waited, expression still, knowing that Caleb hadn't seen the last of me. Not even close. I stood quietly in the elevator, watching the numbers descend. My face revealed nothing, but my pulse was alive with quiet intensity, not fear, but anticipation. When the doors parted, I stepped into the chilled evening air of downtown Seattle and pulled my coat tighter. A few blocks away, I slipped into a small neighborhood cafe, the kind with warm lights and quiet music no one ever notices. I ordered a plain black coffee and sat by the window, back to the wall, eyes on the sidewalk. My phone lay face down on the table. I didn't reach for it. Not yet. Somewhere on the 5th floor of the office I had just exited, a sequence had begun. 10 minutes. That's all it needed. The moment my system access was stripped and the company laptop was detected under someone else's profile, the program I'd embedded months ago would quietly engage. It wasn't malicious. I hadn't built it to destroy. I'd written it as a safeguard, a tether of sorts, a last resort if I ever had to protect what I'd built. Back when Caleb started locking me out of key conversations and bringing in less qualified replacements, I started writing the logic. It sat dormant for months, nested deep in our architecture. I never expected to need it, but today it was finally serving the purpose I had quietly hoped it never would. At 5:47 p.m., the lights in the cafe flickered. Probably just coincidence. But I smiled anyway. I turned my phone over. The first ping came within seconds. System notification. Core integrity check failed. Access restricted. Then another. Demo server 01. Credential mismatch loop. Then a message from Owen, one of the few developers who had always treated me with decency. Hey, something weird's happening with the demo environment. Brent's locked out and the scripts won't launch. Any chance you made changes before leaving? I typed slowly. No changes. Maybe check with Caleb. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness grounding me. I could picture the confusion in the office. Logan, now at my former desk, frantically trying to troubleshoot a system he barely understood. The scripts returning denial after denial. Caleb raising his voice, barking instructions nobody could follow. Because none of them knew the dependencies. None of them had the map. And I hadn't erased anything. I hadn't damaged a single file. I'd simply closed the gate. And only I knew how to open it. Another ping. This one from Caleb. What's going on? Call me immediately. I let the screen dim. I hadn't wanted this to happen. Not to the staff. Not to the interns still learning their way around the codebase. But Caleb had chosen this path the moment he decided to erase me from the equation. Let him explain to the board why the backbone of the company had locked up 2 days before their critical investor pitch. Let him try to justify why his new lead couldn't resolve the issue. Another message arrived. This one more direct. If this is about what happened, we can talk. Don't do this. I can fix it. Please. Talk. After 10 years of loyalty, sacrifice, and silence. Where was that urgency during the missed raises? The canceled meetings? The year I worked through holidays to meet deadlines while he sipped champagne at corporate events? He wanted a conversation now? I placed the phone gently beside my coffee and looked out at the street, watching headlights blur into the rain-streaked glass. I wasn't finished. Not yet. I wandered the streets, letting the buzz of traffic and the chatter of strangers blur into a low hum. It wasn't triumph that filled me. It was something quieter. Sharper. A stillness I hadn't felt in years, like a tightly coiled spring inside me had finally released. Not in anger, not in joy, just in quiet, cold resolve. By dawn, I expected the entire platform to be non-functional. But it wasn't. That was the brilliance of it. The system wasn't broken, it was simply sealed. Everything else remained intact. Email systems ran fine. Internal tools were untouched. But the demo? Untouchable. Secure and inert. At 8:13 a.m., my phone lit up with a call from Owen. I paused, then answered. Hey, he said softly, tentative. Sorry to bother you. I just wanted to check in. Are you all right? The question hit harder than I thought it would. I'm okay, I said. Why? He sighed. Because this place is falling apart. Caleb told the investors it was a minor glitch. He insisted Logan could troubleshoot it. But Logan just froze. Couldn't do anything. I stared out at the passing cars and couldn't help a slight grin. The demo's visible, Owen continued, but we can't interact with anything. Click a button, and the system throws errors. It's locked into read-only mode. That's strange, I said mildly. He tried bringing in an outside contractor last night. That guy left after 2 hours. Nothing worked. Caleb's on edge. Honestly, I think he knows what this is really about. Owen paused, then added, For what it's worth, I never believed you sabotaged anything. You just built something. No one else could. His words stayed with me. In over a decade, no one had said it so plainly. Thank you, I said quietly. He's stalling now, Owen continued. Told the investors it's a synchronization issue. But one already walked out. Another one threatened to back out entirely if things aren't fixed before noon. I glanced at my watch. 9:47, less than 2 hours. The system wasn't broken beyond repair. But unlocking it required a command key and a passphrase I had written on a quiet Sunday afternoon. It wasn't stored anywhere. Just in my head. And I had no intention of giving it away. At 10:22, a message popped up from Caleb. We need to talk. I'm sorry for how everything went down. Let's work something out. I didn't respond. At 10:38, a new number appeared on my screen. I let it ring out. Moments later, the voicemail buzzed in. It was Caleb. Denise, I misjudged you, okay? Look, this platform, the company, it's unraveling. Please, if you can just reverse the lock, we'll bring you back. A senior role. Hell, maybe even higher than before. Just call me. We need you. I let the message play through, then set the phone down. The same man who dismissed me like I was a forgotten errand now offering titles and second chances because he had no other path forward. I didn't erase the voicemail, but I didn't reply either. By 11 o'clock, Owen texted again. They're leaving. One investor called the platform unstable. Caleb tried blaming you, but it's obvious. Everyone sees through it now. That's when I knew. Not just that the demo had failed, but the illusion had too. The belief that if I just worked harder, stayed loyal, kept quiet, they'd see my worth. They never had. And they never would. What usually passed for upbeat press releases had shifted tone. The headlines were sharp, ominous, and far from flattering. Seattle's software star crashes during key showcase. Investor exodus follows critical failure at Sierra Logic Solutions. Another article was more direct. Insider reports suggest complete backend inaccessibility hours before high-stakes demonstration. I read them with a mix of detachment and irony. Caleb had always owned the narrative. He could twist anything, polish any setback. But this time, he had no story. No rebuttal. Just silence. And that silence was beginning to speak louder than any press conference ever could. Around 7 p.m., I received a message from someone unfamiliar, Dana T. She introduced herself simply. I used to work at Sierra Logic. Left a couple years ago. I heard what happened today. Just wanted to say, good for you. That single line cut deeper than any headline. Dana had been in brand strategy. I vaguely recalled her departure being written off as a performance issue. But now I wondered, had she just refused to play along? She wasn't the only one to reach out. A former QA analyst I'd mentored 4 years ago sent a voice note. Thank you for treating me like I belonged. You were the only one who did. Then a message from a summer intern. You didn't laugh when I messed up. You explained. Patiently. I'll never forget that. Small messages. But together, they became something real. A quiet collection of voices confirming what I had long suspected. I hadn't imagined it. I wasn't weak. I wasn't wrong. That night, I went back through my old files, not company projects, but something I'd shelved long ago. An outline. A prototype. Notes for a software platform that focused on transparency, usability, and meaningful connection, not sleek pitches or inflated metrics. The folder was labeled Someday. Maybe someday was now. The following morning, Caleb called again. No voicemail. Just a series of missed calls. At 11:04 a.m., I finally answered. He didn't waste time. I'm not here to argue, he said. His voice was strained, quieter than usual, the weight of reality pressing against it. I need to say this. I let the pause hang. I screwed up, he admitted. I should have handled things differently. You've always been the backbone here. And now, the board's threatening to pull out. We're bleeding credibility. I need you. I'm offering full control, CTO, partner, name your terms. There it was. Not apology, just desperation dressed as an olive branch. I don't want a title, I said calmly. Then what do you want? I paused. Then, to see what happens without me. Click. He didn't call again. That evening, a final message arrived. It was from Owen. I know this isn't my place, but if you start something new, I want to be part of it. I still believe we can build something that matters. I stared at his words for a long time. Then I reopened the Someday folder. And began again. By week's end, the entire tech community was buzzing. Industry sites ran full autopsies of Sierra Logic's meltdown. A leaked report from one of the investors detailed the cascading access failures, the scrambled attempts to salvage the demo, and the growing pressure from the board for leadership changes. For the first time, Caleb couldn't bluff his way out. And me? I was finally building something of my own, not for applause, but because the silence I'd earned had made room for something better. A beginning. In practical terms, it meant one thing: Caleb was out. Officially, it was a leadership restructuring. But everyone in the loop knew what that really meant. What surprised me more, though, were the private messages that started appearing in my inbox. They weren't just curious onlookers or gossip chasers. These were VCs, tech leads, product heads, even reporters. A few wanted quotes. Some wanted meetings. And a handful? They wanted partnerships. One message stood out immediately. Claire Hensley, co-founder of SignalPath, a rising mid-tier firm known for its clean, user-driven integration tools. She reached out directly. "I've admired your work for years. If you're building again, I'd love to talk, maybe even collaborate." We met for dinner 2 nights later at a quiet bistro on Capitol Hill. Claire was sharp, deliberate, and refreshingly candid. She wasn't looking for someone to rescue her company. She wanted to invest in a vision mine. "I studied your infrastructure at Sierra," she said. "The parts with your signature were elegant, precise. The system they built around it? Bloated. Yours deserved better. If you're starting fresh, I want in." I told her about the concept I had revived from my someday folder. A lightweight, transparent platform focused on user control and ethical design. Something that respected privacy, simplicity, and trust, not built for pitch decks, but for real people behind the screens. She didn't hesitate. "I'll fund your seed round. Just show me a prototype. Something tangible." That night, Owen and I huddled at his apartment until past 2. We pulled together wireframes, restructured the system pathways, and stripped away every unnecessary feature. We weren't chasing flash, we were chasing clarity. We called it Rootline, a nod to beginnings, to roots beneath the surface. Honest tech, rebuilt from the ground up. 3 days later, we presented it to Claire, and unknowingly, to 3 investors who had previously backed Sierra Logic. Owen took the technical walkthrough. I spoke about purpose, architecture, and integrity. It was clean, direct. No theatrics, no oversell. Just truth. When I finished, one of the investors leaned back and said, "This is what we thought we were investing in the first time." Claire smiled. "Well, now you actually can." No ego. Just delivery. By week's end, 2 of the investors signed early-stage agreements. We had funding, we had a name, and for the first time in years, I had a seat at the table with my name on the placard. I didn't mention Sierra Logic. I didn't need to. Word traveled fast in tech circles. And while their socials sat untouched and their leadership page still listed Logan as head of engineering, I knew the truth behind the static. The man who once reduced me to a background player had become invisible in his own story. Meanwhile, Rootline was moving. Fast. At first, I stumbled. After years of being behind the curtain, I wasn't used to people looking to me for strategy, for vision, not just for bug fixes or back-end solutions. I over-explained, doubted myself, apologized for asserting direction. But Owen wouldn't let me fade back. "You don't need to defend what you already earned," he said one night as we refined the onboarding interface. "You're not filling someone's shoes. You made your own." And I finally believed him. There was no sugarcoating in Owen's tone, just quiet sincerity. And maybe that's why it landed so deeply. It had been years since anyone in this field acknowledged my expertise without trying to challenge it or claim it. Owen and I found a rhythm quickly, collaborative, but not codependent. I concentrated on system integrity, network structure, and data flow. He took the lead on interface logic and user experience. His documentation read like a guide, not a puzzle, written by someone who actually respected the person on the other side of the screen. Rootline wasn't trying to chase trends. It wasn't a social app or a productivity gimmick disguised as innovation. It was meant for people with real work to do, small nonprofits, community centers, family-run businesses. The kind of people who didn't have IT staff or tech advisors. We built tools they could actually use, encrypted communication, intuitive file handling, and clear design without surveillance baked into the code. We didn't try to reinvent the system. We just stopped pretending it needed sparkle to be useful. One afternoon, while reviewing interface sketches, Owen asked, almost absently, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd stayed at Sierra?" I paused, pen hovering over the whiteboard. I'd probably have been promoted to a title that came with no authority, still rewriting other people's work in the background. He laughed lightly. Solid answer. I should have left the day I saw Caleb present your build as his. It was the first time either of us said it out loud. Not in anger, just in truth. And somehow, naming it made it feel lighter. That night, we stayed late at the office, watching the first users interact with our live demo. A nonprofit in Bend, Oregon had used Rootline to organize a relief campaign within hours of signing up. A local archive from Illinois uploaded their entire newsletter archive and left a note. We've been waiting for something like this. It wasn't viral growth. It was real use. That meant more to me than any investor applause ever could. As we wrapped up, Owen lingered at the door. You know, he said carefully, if you ever feel like building more than software together. He let the thought hang. And I let the silence hold it. I'm not ready for more just yet, I said. But let's keep building this. He nodded toward the screen, Rootline's logo glowing softly. Sounds perfect, he said. 3 months later, Rootline was still modest, but growing. We'd just welcomed our 100th active group, a mutual aid circle in Western Pennsylvania, that thanked us for designing something that didn't treat people like data points. That message meant more than any press mention ever could. Owen and I had built a routine, coding late, debating layouts, sharing takeout on the same couch we once sketched out the prototype on. There was a new warmth now. Quiet. Steady. Maybe even something waiting patiently for the right time. But neither of us tried to force it. What we had was built on trust, layered in respect and shaped by patience. There was no urgency to define what might come next. One crisp Monday, I checked my inbox and noticed a message from Claire. The subject line read, "Thought you'd appreciate this." I clicked the link she'd attached. Exodus continues at Sierra Logic. Senior engineer resigns amid allegations of toxic management and idea theft. I sat still. The article read like a ghost of my own experience. A newly hired developer, this time a man, had walked out after raising flags about unethical credit-taking and manipulation within his team. The interim CEO, brought in after Caleb's exit, hadn't lasted more than a quarter. Another leadership shuffle was underway. Their board was scrambling to salvage what little they hadn't already lost. It was unraveling. But the feeling that settled over me wasn't pride. It was truth. Finally, clear and sharp. It had never been about my age, or my voice, or my so-called lack of cultural fit. The rot had always been theirs. The whisper I used to fear, maybe I wasn't enough, was gone. Dead and buried. Owen looked up from his monitor, noticing the article on my screen. That hit hard, he asked gently. I gave a small nod. Not in the way you'd think. I'm okay. Really. Because I saw it differently now from the outside looking in. That company I once fought so hard to belong to was collapsing under the weight of its own dysfunction. No sabotage. No drama. Just poor choices echoing through a hollow structure until there was no one left to cover the cracks. I clicked out of the browser. I need to wrap the Vermont API update, I said with a quiet smile. They want the calendar tool customized by Thursday. Owen nodded. Want me to take care of the user experience tweaks? I glanced over at him, steady, thoughtful, exactly the kind of teammate I'd spent a career hoping for. I'd like that, I said. That was it. No grand finale. No vindictive monologue. Just a solid codebase, a thoughtful product, and the peaceful satisfaction of knowing we'd built something meaningful without exploiting anyone to do it. I still had my old notes from Sierra. A dusty lanyard, some faded sketches from long nights. But now, they were memories, not scars. proof that I hadn't been erased, because I had walked away and created something better. And that, finally, was enough.